The story begins high above the ocean, where a violent storm throws a passenger plane into complete chaos. Linda is returning from a business trip with her colleagues when the aircraft suddenly starts shaking uncontrollably. Within seconds, a massive explosion tears through the cabin, throwing terrified passengers in every direction. Those without seatbelts are slammed against the walls, while the cabin itself rips apart under the crushing pressure. The freezing wind rushes inside, sucking helpless people straight into the endless sky. In the middle of the panic, Linda watches as her desperate manager clings to her leg to survive. Another employee reaches out to the ruthless company boss for help, but instead of saving him, the selfish executive shoves him toward the opening. As the falling man grabs the manager's leg, both lose their balance and disappear into the storm. Before Linda can even process the horror, darkness surrounds her as the crippled plane spirals uncontrollably toward the endless ocean below. Miraculously, the plane crashes into the sea at just the right angle, preventing it from exploding instantly. Water floods the cabin within moments, forcing Linda to unbuckle herself and fight her way through the rising water before escaping to the surface. She survives, but now finds herself completely alone in the middle of an endless ocean. Just as hope begins to fade, she notices a tiny island in the distance and uses every ounce of strength to swim toward it. By sunrise, she finally reaches the deserted shore, believing the worst is finally over. But she has no idea that her real nightmare is only beginning. While exploring the beach, she discovers another survivor lying unconscious near the shoreline. As she rushes closer, she is shocked to recognize him as Bradley, her arrogant boss. He survived the crash but suffered a badly broken leg. Ironically, out of everyone on the flight, only these two remain alive. Instead of feeling relieved, Linda is filled with resentment because Bradley is the man she despises more than anyone. Linda remembers how she was once the company's most talented employee, earning everyone's respect through hard work and dedication. She was only days away from becoming the new manager when tragedy struck. The former CEO died unexpectedly, allowing his inexperienced son Bradley to inherit the entire company. The moment Bradley took control, he stole Linda's well-deserved promotion and handed it to one of his loyal friends instead. From that day on, he constantly humiliated her alongside his privileged circle. Standing over his unconscious body now, Linda briefly considers leaving him to die. But another thought quickly crosses her mind. If she saves his life, perhaps she can regain his trust and finally earn the promotion she deserved. She immediately begins gathering banana leaves, branches, and vines, skillfully constructing a shelter strong enough to protect them from the harsh tropical sun before searching for a reliable source of fresh drinking water. Using nothing but intelligence and survival instincts, Linda digs a pit into the sand, places coconut shells inside, and cleverly collects fresh rainwater as a storm passes overhead. When Bradley finally regains consciousness, he is shocked to discover that Linda has kept him alive. Reluctantly, he thanks her while she calmly demonstrates her impressive survival skills by starting a fire through friction and catching fresh fish for dinner. Bradley, who has spent his entire life surrounded by luxury, is disgusted by the simple meal but has no choice except to swallow every bite to stay alive. Unlike him, Linda begins enjoying the freedom of island life, where nobody belittles or controls her anymore. Days pass and the island slowly transforms them both. Linda grows stronger and happier, while Bradley becomes increasingly desperate to escape. Furious, he criticizes Linda for never building a rescue signal or creating a larger fire that passing boats might notice, accusing her of pretending to care while secretly enjoying their isolation. Bradley's constant insults finally make Linda realize that kindness alone will never change him. Without saying a word, she walks away and leaves him completely alone. At first, Bradley arrogantly assumes she will return at any moment, but an entire day passes without seeing her again. That night, a violent storm destroys the shelter Linda built, leaving him exposed to the elements. The following day's unbearable heat pushes his dehydrated body to the edge of collapse until he finally loses consciousness. Only then does Linda return carrying precious drinking water. Bradley greedily drinks every drop, finally understanding that his survival depends entirely on her. While recovering, He notices Linda sharpening a spear and learns she plans to hunt a deadly wild boar. Terrified for both their lives, he begs her not to enter the jungle, knowing that if she dies, he will perish as well. Ignoring every warning, Linda disappears into the dense forest, determined to prove she can conquer any challenge. Deep inside the jungle, Linda carefully tracks the dangerous animal until the massive wild boar suddenly charges without warning, launching her through the air. By pure luck, a fallen tree blocks the beast's path, giving her just enough time to recover and run. The boar follows her scent relentlessly, but Linda cleverly leaves behind torn pieces of clothing to confuse it. At the perfect moment, she drives her spear deep into its body. Although the enraged animal snaps the weapon in half and attacks again, Linda refuses to panic. She uses a wooden pole to keep the beast away before delivering the final blow that kills it. Bradley is horrified when she drags the severed head back to camp, finally realizing that the quiet woman he once bullied is incredibly fearless and capable. Days later, Linda discovers a beautiful freshwater waterfall, solving their biggest survival problem. Her relief is short-lived, however, when the distant sound of a boat engine suddenly echoes across the island. Filled with excitement, Linda races toward the shoreline and finally spots a boat approaching from the distance. For a brief moment, rescue seems certain. But as she prepares to call for help, she suddenly stops. The thought of returning to her old life overwhelms her. Going back means once again working under arrogant bosses, enduring endless humiliation, and sacrificing her freedom. Remaining on the island would make her completely independent, free to live by her own rules forever. After struggling with the decision, she quietly hides until the boat disappears beyond the horizon. When she returns, she tells Bradley nothing about what happened. Bradley, however, has no intention of spending the rest of his life stranded there. Completely transformed after weeks of suffering, he demands they build a raft capable of reaching nearby boats. Linda immediately refuses, calling the idea far too dangerous. Her rejection ignites Bradley's frustration, convincing him to leave her and survive entirely on his own. Determined to prove himself, Bradley builds a separate camp and begins constructing his own raft. Reality quickly crushes his confidence. He cannot even start a proper fire, and his broken leg prevents him from gathering enough supplies. He survives only by collecting rainwater inside coconut shells while desperately writing the word, "Help," across the beach. Days pass without any rescue arriving. Starving beyond endurance, Bradley attempts to eat insects, only to vomit moments later in disgust. Meanwhile, Linda calmly enjoys delicious meals she prepares herself. Finally broken both physically and emotionally, Bradley crawls back to Linda on his knees, sincerely apologizing for everything he has done. Amused by his complete transformation, Linda forgives him and allows him back into her camp. Although Bradley outwardly appears grateful, deep inside he remains trapped by pride and quietly waits for the perfect opportunity to regain control. As Bradley slowly recovers, Linda guides him to the island's highest mountain peak, revealing breathtaking views hidden above the jungle. She explains that the island's greatest dangers lie beneath its beauty. Picking several innocent-looking berries, she demonstrates how poisonous they are by rubbing their juice onto her own arm, causing painful red rashes within minutes. She also warns him never to cross beyond a formation of X-shaped rocks, because the area is supposedly filled with deadly thorny vines and toxic plants. Bradley secretly memorizes every detail. On the way back, pretending to be exhausted, he lingers behind and quietly steals several poisonous berries. Suddenly, the ground beneath Linda collapses, sending her plunging into a hidden sinkhole. Horrified, Bradley immediately rushes to save her. Despite their complicated relationship, he cannot stand watching her die. After an exhausting struggle, he pulls her back to safety, earning her trust for the very first time. Soon another powerful storm devastates the island, destroying their shelter and toppling massive trees all around them. Fortunately, they previously discovered a nearby cave where they take refuge from the deadly weather. Completely soaked and freezing, the only way to survive the cold night is by huddling together for warmth. Their growing closeness awakens unexpected emotions inside Linda, who slowly begins falling in love with Bradley. Wanting to repay her kindness, Bradley volunteers to prepare dinner himself. Surprisingly, the meal turns out delicious, but moments after taking a few bites, Linda becomes dizzy. Her vision blurs before she collapses unconscious onto the ground. Bradley doesn't hesitate for even a second. Instead of helping her, he races into the forest and drags out a wooden raft he had secretly built. Realizing Linda never intended to leave the island, he deliberately poisoned her with the berries so he could finally escape alone. Bradley happily pushes the fragile raft into the sea and paddles away without looking back. Freedom seems only moments away until enormous waves suddenly rise from nowhere, smashing the raft into pieces and dragging him beneath the raging ocean. Fortunately, he had not traveled far before disaster struck. Regaining consciousness later, he discovers Linda has rescued him once again. Ashamed of his betrayal, Bradley begs for forgiveness. Linda silently hands him a freshly cooked crab, which he eats without suspicion. Within moments, his mouth turns numb before paralysis spreads throughout his entire body. Calmly watching him panic, Linda reveals the truth. She poisoned him with venom from a blue-ringed octopus, capable of completely paralyzing its victims. Producing a heated knife, she slowly approaches him while he lies helpless, convinced his life is about to end. Terror overwhelms him as she raises the blade for what appears to be a horrifying act of revenge. Unable to move even a finger, Bradley watches in absolute horror as Linda lowers the burning knife. Blood suddenly splashes across him, convincing him she has mutilated him. Only then does Linda burst into laughter and reveal that she merely cut apart a rat beside him to teach him a terrifying lesson. Completely broken by fear, Bradley loses every trace of arrogance and obediently follows her every command. But Linda's control doesn't last forever. One day, another boat engine echoes across the ocean. This time, the approaching vessel has already spotted the island. As it reaches shore, Linda is stunned to discover Bradley's fiancée, Jenny, accompanied by a guide. While official rescue teams had already abandoned the search, Jenny never gave up hope and finally located Bradley. Forced to smile, Linda reveals that Bradley is alive. Though deep inside she has no desire whatsoever to leave the island she now considers her own paradise. Only Jenny and the guide know that the survivors are alive, meaning nobody else is aware of their discovery. Realizing everything she has built could disappear forever, Linda quietly makes a horrifying decision. Claiming she knows a shortcut, she leads both newcomers toward a dangerous rocky area where she herself nearly died earlier. Pretending to tie her shoelaces, she encourages them to walk ahead. Suddenly, the ground gives way beneath Jenny, sending her crashing into a hidden pit. Linda's deadly trap succeeds only partially because the guide survives. Standing there in silence, Linda struggles with the horrifying consequences of her own actions before eventually returning alone to Bradley. Guilt begins eating away at her conscience, yet she says nothing. Soon afterward, Bradley heads into the jungle searching for food. While tracking a young wild boar, he notices a human hand sticking out from freshly disturbed soil, wearing the very engagement ring he once gave Jenny. The horrifying discovery shatters Bradley completely. Realizing the buried body belongs to Jenny, uncontrollable rage consumes him. Clutching her ring, he races back toward camp and confronts Linda, demanding to know why she murdered his fiancée. Linda desperately insists it was all an accident, but Bradley refuses to believe a single word. As tensions explode, Linda secretly reaches for her knife, only to discover Bradley has already stolen it. Instantly realizing she is defenseless, she runs deep into the jungle while Bradley chases after her. Cornered with nowhere left to escape, Linda devises another clever trap. Bradley spots what appears to be her shadow behind a tree, but upon reaching it, he finds only her abandoned shoes with the laces missing. Suddenly, Linda attacks from behind, wrapping the shoelaces tightly around his neck and choking him with every ounce of strength she possesses. Bradley desperately fights for air while struggling against Linda's deadly grip. During the violent struggle, the stolen knife falls onto the forest floor. With one final burst of strength, Bradley grabs Linda by the hair and slams her face first into the muddy ground before pinning her beneath him. He forces her face deeper into the mud, determined to end the nightmare once and for all. At the perfect moment, Linda reaches the fallen knife. By the time she wipes the mud from her eyes, Bradley has vanished. Instead of continuing the fight, he unknowingly heads toward the supposedly poisonous section of the island Linda always warned him to avoid. Believing nature will finish the job, Linda calmly walks away. After running for a long distance without suffering any consequences, Bradley suddenly freezes in disbelief when a luxurious mansion appears hidden between two enormous cliffs, revealing that the island has never been abandoned at all. Filled with renewed hope, Bradley rushes toward the magnificent villa, shouting for help. Receiving no answer, he notices the front door standing open and cautiously steps inside. Turning on the lights, he discovers a fully furnished home with electricity, modern appliances, and a refrigerator stocked with fresh drinks. As he drinks desperately needed water, Linda's voice suddenly echoes through hidden speakers. Piece by piece, the horrifying truth unfolds. She admits every story about poisonous territory was completely fabricated to keep him away from the villa. The supply boat she spotted months earlier secretly led her to this luxurious private island. She discovered the access codes, quietly occupied the mansion, cleaned it after every visit, and lived there comfortably whenever the wealthy owner was away. Jenny's unexpected arrival destroyed her perfect life, forcing her into committing murder to protect the paradise she believed belonged only to her. Bradley's blood runs cold as Linda finishes revealing the terrifying extent of her deception. Frantically searching for a control room, he fails to locate the hidden surveillance system before events take another deadly turn. Linda suddenly appears inside the mansion carrying a hunting shotgun she had already secured. Bradley immediately drops to his knees and begs for mercy. Promising never to leave again, he claims he has genuinely fallen in love with her during their time together. He desperately reminds her of every beautiful memory they shared on the island, hoping to soften her heart. But Linda notices something unusual behind him: a decorative bull's head with one missing horn. Instantly sensing danger, she grabs a nearby golf club while Bradley snatches the shotgun and pulls the trigger. Nothing happens. The weapon is completely unloaded, exactly as Linda had planned from the beginning. Before Bradley can react, Linda swings the golf club with unstoppable fury, striking him again and again. Every blow lands harder than the last until the final crushing strike ends his life forever. With Bradley dead, Linda carefully cleans every trace of the violent confrontation throughout the luxurious villa. She later presents herself as the sole survivor of a miraculous plane crash, crafting a believable survival story that hides every dark secret buried beneath the island's beautiful surface. To the outside world, she becomes the heroic woman who endured impossible odds and somehow escaped alive. But only the silent island knows the horrifying truth: that Paradise slowly transformed an ordinary employee into a ruthless killer willing to sacrifice anyone who threatened the freedom she had finally found.